that, you don't know anything about history. You know, you might want to repeat it after me. All of the governments let all of the people down all of the time. Because, basically speaking, governments are individuals that are looking after their own interest. You know, they're looking after their own power unit. They're looking after their own election. They're not worried about whether you're making your mortgage payment, you know, in downtown Arkansas. They could give a damn, you know. They are just worried about their own position. And they get to play the game, and they get to spend your cash, and then they send you, as I've said before, this love letter called a tax bill that you have to pay for their creativity. They don't actually create any wealth for themselves. The wealth of the nation is the individual man, the individual female, the working people of the country. We create the wealth, and they just get to play with it. You know, and the way they play with it is they get to spend it pretty much any way they like. They get to bill you anytime they want to bill you, and if they run out, they just print some more. And so we're looking at a situation where the whole of the circle, the whole of the people that control this circle, the families that run the world, they have a control of the money. And money to the common man is life force. It's God force to a guy that doesn't have a spiritual quest, a person that doesn't have a quest or doesn't have a belief in any kind of higher transcendence. Those people that are purely in the physical plane, money is their God force. And once these people got control of the money, they could control the life force for the world. And then they could control the destiny of the world. And there's none of you here that haven't been controlled by the big families that run the world. Because they decide everything, from the price you pay for a shirt to how much you pay to go to the movies. Everything is decided, and the whole system is designed not for you not to come out of the pack. And as long as you remember that, now you can push against it, and you can say, gosh, that's dreadful, you know, that's awful. Why have they designed it like that? They designed it because they're into control. They're into making sure that none of us ever get out. Okay, and you can push and you can rant and rave and you can have your little placard and you can go down to D.C. and stand there in front of the White House and it won't do anything for you. The only way you can win your freedom is to have enough cash to pull out, okay, and to disengage somewhat from the feelings of the world, from the emotions of the world, so it isn't controlling you. Okay, and that to me I think is incredibly important because you've been sold this bill of goods that says you can't have it, and then the whole thing is designed, and if any of you do too well, they take the money back from you. All the money you have is basically on rental. You don't have any wealth of your own. I mean, look, for example, in property taxes, okay? They take, let's say, 1% or 1.5% of that property from you every year, okay? And governments go on for hundreds of years, so they can wait to get the house back from you. But they take, let's say, 1% a year. In one generation, they've got a quarter of your house. They didn't do anything for it. They never paid you. I mean, nothing happened. They just took a quarter of your house back. In 2 generations, they got half the house. In 4 generations, they'll own all of the real estate of the country. And that's how property taxes work. You know, so you think they've got your interest at heart? No, they just chip in a little bit of your income back, and they time it or they place it so that it's like this creeping thing that you're never really quite aware of. You know, and then suddenly you think, my goodness me, I've given 9% of my house back to these people. Why did I do that? You know, well, you did it because they passed the law saying you had to do it, and you don't have options. I believe in obeying the laws, but I also believe that you can design your life to take maximum fluidity within the law. You know, within the tax structure, within all of the things that you are allowed to do, that the people that control this circle allow you a certain amount of modicum of like elbow room, and then you use that in order to become powerful. And so, as you look at that, you can see that for you to become powerful, to have enough money, you have to begin, first of all, to look at what's stopping you getting money. You know, what are these feelings inside of me that don't allow me to be wealthy? Because for you to be wealthy and to become wealthy and to have people show up and they want to share their wealth with you, because there's only one place that you can get money, and that's from the other people in the physical plane. Because we're the only people that believe in that stuff, okay? You can't get it from any place else other than the other mugs in the game with us. And so we have this energy that's absolutely neutral, and you have to create an energy from within yourself and then get these people to come along and give you the cash. To do that, you have to look at, hey, what do I really feel? You know, what do I really feel about money? And when you look at how we deal with money, you can see that, like, for example, you may have had feelings. I know I certainly did. I remember thinking that if I became too successful financially, somehow it would pull me out of the society that I lived in. You know? Like, if I do too well, I might have to leave this ghetto, you know, that kind of feeling, you know? Or if I do too well, all my friends won't like me anymore. You know, or if I do too well, it may not be as loving or as strong as God might want for me, you know, because I bought into the fact that God wanted me to be poor, you know. And so as you look at that, you can see that, like, we have hundreds of these limitations. I mean, thousands of them. You know, stitch in time saves 9. You know, there's one. You know, what does that mean, for goodness sake, you know? If the thing tears, chuck it away and buy another one. What are you doing all the stitching for? I mean, who's got time to do stitching and stuff, you know? Oh, stitch. You know, I mean, you get another. It's as simple as that. But we buy that. We buy, for example, things like women are no good at figures, you know, like they're no good at mathematics. That means that somehow or other they're not going to make so much money. And, of course, women are just as good as anybody else with mathematics. You only need an $8 calculator. You can work it up to $10 billion, you know. And I do a lot of business with females, and we travel all over the world, and we use a lot of feminine talent in various areas, and they know how to charge, and, you know, they know how to make it work. I mean, it's simple. It's like, well, here's $1,000, lady, and here's $20,000. Which would you like to have, you know? I mean, it's obvious. You don't have to be brilliant to figure that one out. And so, you know, we buy that stuff. We buy that stuff. We buy, like, getting inside the little circle, getting in the corporation, and taking what they eke out for us, you know? There are other types of limitations that deal with, like, religious beliefs, you know, where if you're not, you know, you're not holy if you're rich, or that kind of thing. And then, of course, we have all the limitations that deal with, well, if I do too well, you know, nobody will like me. If I do too well, it'll be such a responsibility looking after all this cash. You know, how the heck am I going to figure out what to do with all of this money? You know, if I do too well, you know, it will cause me problems. I'll have all these responsibilities. I'll have to defend it and so on. And we buy that stuff. Philosophical limitations about your relationship to money. You know, spiritual limitations of one kind or another, sexual limitations. You know, maybe if you're a minority, you may feel that in this society you don't have the ability to do as well as the people that are in the majority, like as if the God force of the money knows what the color of your skin is, you know, and thinks, oh, I'm going to give this guy a hard time because he's different or something like that. And as you look at that, you can see that all of the people out there in a society or in a circle that is not designed for them to do well with anyway, and all of the belief patterns they've got and all of the limitations, you can see that, like, you can understand why the people aren't rich. You know, why they never make any cash. Let me ask you for one or two of, like, those standard limitations that we're all a part of, those limitations that are so much a part of our culture. Perhaps you might like to kind of wander around and pick up a few for me.
Great. Stuart, there's one my mum always used to say, you've got to save for a rainy day.
Absolutely. And if you save for a rainy day, of course it rains, you know, it has to. Because that energy of putting in the negativity pulls to you the rainy day. You know, the very fact that you believe you're going to be a part of a disaster means the disaster will happen. And if you put a whole bunch of dry food in a hole in the ground, you know, because of that energy of defending yourself, you mount 2 machine guns on the roof, you put your granny there defending the house, defending the street, then what happens is that energy pulls to you the disaster because of the negativity that you're putting out. And if you put this dry food in the ground, something will happen, and this moose will come along and it'll do itself on your food, and there goes your stash, or there goes your stock. You know, let me ask you for some others.
If you have any money, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, if you have any money, don't tell anybody, because some reason or other that's going to either make them angry or jealous, or they're going to come around and try to take it from you. Of course, that's a load of nonsense. If you're wealthy, you just feel wealthy. I think you don't want to be brash about your wealth and sort of showy or too showy, but you've got to spend it. There's absolutely no point in having money if you don't get rid of it. The whole point of it is to keep it moving and keep it flowing. Money, of course, is like manure. If you pile it all up in one place, it stinks. If you spread it around, it makes things grow. Right? Let's have another one.
It's easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than a rich man into heaven.
Right, that's a standard one. And, of course, the eye of the needle, I believe, was it not the gate of Jerusalem? And to get a camel through the gate of Jerusalem wasn't a big deal. And if the camel was a bit stubborn, you just had the camel over here, and you take a bucket full of the camel's lunch, and you put it on the other side of the gate, and you go, hither, hither, camel, and it comes along, because that's how they talk in biblical times, hither, hither. And the camel just automatically walks through the gate. And, of course, a lot of our philosophies were designed to make sure that nobody got wealthy. You know, you can imagine how, like, well, imagine in medieval times when, say, for example, a lot of the churches owned all of the land. I mean, thousands and thousands of acres of land, you know. And the common people were dying of starvation, living 10 in a room in squalid, filthy conditions. From time to time, they'd go up to the sort of the big monastery or something, and they'd bang on the door, and they'd say, oi, what about us, you know? What do we get? And, of course, those people who owned or controlled the circle in their day You know, they weren't about to share it with everybody. They weren't about to say, well, look, we'll peel you off 5 acres in the North 40. And so they had to sort of say, well, you'll get yours later. You know, you'll get yours in the afterlife. You know, this poverty stuff's really cute, and you're loving it right now because later on you're going to get it. And of course now we're not so stupid, you know. We're a little bit more sophisticated. We aren't going to buy into that afterlife stuff. Not because I don't believe in an afterlife, but I want my power now. I want my experiences now where I can experience them and become a part of them, and that's what you want. You don't want a promise for later. And of course the mind and the ego will always accept a promise. You know, you can always tell somebody, yeah, I'll do it for you, but later. And the mind goes, oh, that's okay, later, later. And that's why that philosophy was so powerful and so useful to the people that ran the situation in those days, because they could promise people a later date, you know, a long-term delivery.
What about being filthy rich?
Yes, like as if rich is somehow dirty. And isn't it true how, like, for a lot of people, money equates with, like, the misuse of it. You know, like if you're rich, you're bound to be misusing it. And of course, it's nothing to do with that. You know, you can have money and be loving and generous and kind and to help the world, you know. But isn't it interesting that we equate wealth with, like, some kind of misdemeanor or not acting honorably? And of course, that's not necessarily the case at all. Any others, Hugh? Money corrupts. Yes, and of course, a lot of times it does, because money is power in our physical plane. And power is very, very hard to work with. And the whole point of experiencing power is, in a way, to misuse it. You know, because that's the only way you really get to learn about it. But in the corruption is also the healing and the transcendence. And I think that's pretty important, you know. Yeah, give us this day our daily bread, like there isn't going to be enough. Okay? Like this little bit's coming up. It's like welfare. Here's your little welfare. Any others?
Money can't buy you love.
Yes, money can't buy you love. But in fact, yes, it can. Okay? Definitely. But the fact is, of course, that the way you get love is to express love. You know, and it's nothing to do with money. It's absolutely nothing to do with money. In fact, and money can buy you love, push to shove. But basically speaking, it's only a matter of expressing a loving attitude, and love will come to you anyway. Any others? Yes?
Can we have a positive one? Money makes the world go round.
Money makes the world go round, and of course it doesn't. The world spins automatically of its own. Yeah, save for emergencies. Okay? That's the same thing as was said before, where you're waiting for the emergency to come.
Beautiful people are rich.
I'm sorry, I've got more than one coming at once now. Yes?
Only beautiful people are rich?
Only beautiful people are rich? That's not so true. I know a lot of ugly millionaires. Yeah. But you see how all of that stuff became so important, you know, and all of that stuff became a part of our culture and a part of the way that we treat money. And of course, what you have to do now is to begin to resonate a powerful intention for your whole trip about money. Because when a person permeates that negativity or that weakness inside of you, because it is already there in your mind, there has to be an acceptance. You know, you have to accept that. If you're standing next to somebody in a supermarket and they're projecting lack, if you have lack inside your mind, you actually enhance or increase the lack that you have. Okay? The only way you can come out of power is to not have it in your mind, or to have this forward projection of energy, this expanding energy that feels, yes, I can, yes, I will, I have it all around me, this is a flowing situation, and there's no problem with the amount of money that's going to come to me in my life. When you resonate your feelings, they change moment by moment as to what you feel about yourself. If you feel negative, you begin to create inside of you a feeling that pulls energy to it in a kind of imploding or coming in parabola of energy or curve of energy. And negativity has a way of resonating, so it sucks other feelings towards it. So if you're negative, you'll pull to you somebody else that is equally negative. If you're negative, you'll pull to yourself energy patterns that are disastrous or tend to fall about. And at the top of the curve, you know, it's just little niggly things that go wrong. You know, the car won't start, and this happens, and the handle comes off the bathroom door, that kind of stuff. But then bit by bit, as you begin to resonate the negativity after a long period of time, then suddenly the whole energy pattern begins to break up around you, and the whole thing drops on your head and collapses on top of you. You know, whether it's a financial collapse, or whether it's a collapse of your physical body, or collapse of a relationship or some situation, it's because through the negativity, you pull that to you. And by pulling it to you, you suck from the physical plane, and you suck only those parts that are congruent to you. If you imagine yourself walking along in this bubble of energy, okay, all of life is coming at you at the speed of light, and it's coming at you upside down. okay, at the speed of light. And you have all of these possibilities coming at you at any one given moment, okay? And you will pull from those feelings that are the same as your feelings, that are congruent with your feelings. So all the goodness in the world is coming at you, and all the evil's coming at you. And then you can pick up whatever you want. And so you kind of filter through your own feelings those experiences that are exactly the same as what you feel. And so as you maintain and establish a negative energy pattern, or a pattern of limitation or lack, it begins to pull in on you, and it pulls from the physical plane all of those things that are exactly the same. The only way to defend yourself against that, the only way to really develop a power inside of yourself, is for you to begin to pull out of you this transcendent, infinite, abundant feeling from within you. When you express positively, it creates an outgoing or exploding curve of energy. It's like this outgoing feeling. Not only is it warm, is it fresh, is it loving, but it inspires people because it's pure life force. It's pure confidence. And it's not like sort of confidence that you wear on your sleeve, which is real sort of pushy type of confidence, but it's basically confidence of feeling everything's okay. And as you resonate that energy outwards, the more and more power that you put out into the world, the more you allow that infinity and that abundance to come from your feelings, the less the negativity of the other people pulls you down. Because you cannot walk in a crowd of people, say in a supermarket or in a shopping mall, without having all of those people affect you. And you've all experienced it, where you've got out of a car and you've walked into a mall and you've only walked like maybe 100 yards or 200 yards, and you bought like a can of something and you walk back to your car and you're absolutely exhausted. You know, have you had that experience? Right. And it's because what happens is, as you walk through that mall, your feelings are resonating around you, and everybody else is literally taking a bit of that energy from you. Every time they have eye contact with you, every time they touch you, every time they pass you, a part of you leaves with them. Unless you're resonating this everlasting supply from within yourself and resonating it powerfully and strongly, then what happens is you get into the habit of holding your energy, holding that power to yourself. And it's the same way, again, with money. If you feel confident about it, it begins to be there. It's like natural. But you can't come from like way down here in a state of, let's say, limitation and poverty to something up here where you're walking with or a part of absolute abundance. You know, if you resonate poor feelings, you have to stay poor, because universal law's got to reflect that. And so the name of the game as you begin to master money is, one, allow yourself the patience to go beyond the old stuff, the old garbage, and two, begin to resonate in your feelings the abundance that you're a part of. And here you have to be very, very careful, because a lot of people begin to think, oh yeah, all I've got to do is act abundant, act powerfully, act transcendent, you know, buy a lot of stuff, buy a lot of fancy clothes, and abundance will come to me. In fact, what you've got to do is you've got to begin to see abundance in those things that you actually have. Okay? It's not a matter of like going out and spending a lot of money on French clothes or something and then being in debt, because that very fact that you're in a debt is going to pull you backwards. It's more like saying, okay, around me I have this and I see beauty and abundance in it. And then, as you begin to become more and more confident and you have more and more surplus income, you can begin to create affirmations of abundance in your feelings that actually affirm, hey, I'm doing fine, I'm doing well. And so, yes, go out and buy a good suit. Go out and buy a fine dress, a fine pair of shoes, whatever it is, you know, and have one, but have one of the very, very best quality. If you go for the cheap and the cheerful and the discount, it's always has that energy. You know, a discount, say, vacuum cleaner has a discount vacuum cleaner's energy. And I remember my wife once buying this vacuum cleaner. It was at a used machinery shop, you know, one of those places where they sell used appliances. And she was all proud of herself because she'd got this thing for $15. And she wheels in this vacuum cleaner, and it looked like a $15 vacuum cleaner, you know. In fact, to me, it looked like she'd been ripped off at $15. And she plugs it in, and there's this limp little bag hanging on the back of this thing, you know. I mean, it's just holding on for grim death. And I said to her, don't you think that bag is supposed to be like full of air and abundant and pleased with itself? And she says, yeah, you know, I think you're right. And she was vacuum cleaning this room, and the vacuum cleaner made a decent kind of noise, but you could see that nothing was coming up off the carpet, you know. As it went over dust and pieces of paper, they just jumped up and then went back down again. And I thought, this is not a real effective way of vacuum cleaning the carpets. And then as she was wheeling this stupid thing around, the wheel came off. And as it came off, it created this sort of very, very sort of gentle curve as it went around the carpet and sort of came into this semicircle around to the other side of the room. And of course, as the wheel went round the room, it did pick up a little bit of dust on the wheel, you know, that was natural. And I looked at it, I thought, oh, this is how this vacuum cleaner works, right? It fires little wheels that pick up microscopic bits of dust. You know, if you buy something at a discount, if you buy the cheap and cheerful, that's the only energy you'll ever have. You know, and you can go in there and you can see this vacuum cleaner and it looks neat and it's made underwater by Brazilian convicts and it only costs $9 and you'll say, I take it, and it has that energy. And so I would say to you, like, if your life is in control and if you're beginning to master money and beginning to feel that you will always have money, then you can begin to spend on those things that are important for you. And I would always go for the very best. I would just have less of them. You know, if you've only got one suit, at least have one decent suit and look good in that. So at least when you go for the interview, you come out of an energy of like, you know, I feel abundant, I act abundant. But don't go wacko, wacko, wacko and just spend a whole bunch of money. And I've watched people take on this philosophy and do exactly that and get themselves into tremendous trouble, you know. As you begin to create those feelings inside of yourself, it has to permeate your entire life. You can't have, like, let's say, one nice dress and then buy a $1.99 pair of shoes, you know, plasticky ones. And you can pretty much always tell people buy their shoes, because only people that have got money spend money on shoes, you know, that buy decent shoes. So you'll get somebody that's wearing this incredible dress, and then they're wearing these pair of shoes, and they're like this little plasticky pair of shoes. And you can suss it out. I mean, you can say, oh, my gosh, look at that. You know, if somebody comes in for an interview and they're beautifully dressed and they're wearing a decent pair of shoes, you know that that person, you know, feels good about themselves, feels strong. And of course, how much money you make is exceptionally intimately linked to how good you feel about yourself. Because it's a function of the ego to devise a system for its own survival. It's a function of the ego to try to win acceptance from the people. It wants you to love it. You know, you want people to come up to you and love you. And so what happens is, as we go out into the marketplace, we have a tendency to sort of charge less or not charge anything at all, just to win people's acceptance. And that's the same thing about being sucked into what people think about us. You know, if you're not sucked into what people think about you, you just go about your life, what they think about you is their problem, not your problem, then you can begin to charge what you like for your services. And if you're coming out of energy, and you're coming out of love, and you're coming out of transcendence, you're basically selling a higher ideal, and there isn't any limit to what you can charge. But so often, you'll do an incredible job for somebody, and they'll come up to you and they'll say, how much do I owe you? And you'll say, no, you know, I don't need any money, you know. I mean, how many of you have done that, you know? I mean, I watch your heads nodding, you know, yeah, no, I don't want that. And what you're sort of saying is, please love me. You know, if I do this for absolutely nothing, will you love me, you know? Or you've said, yeah, you know, okay, but it should normally be $100 and just give me 20 or just give me 10 bucks and that'll be enough. And it's a way of like not feeling confident about yourself. When you give something, when you sell something to somebody, when you give them a service, when you do something for them in a commercial act, you're loving them. You're helping them. You're assisting them, you know? You're delivering this refrigerator to them, and that saves them going all over everywhere and finding a refrigerator or building one themselves. You know, when you transfer goods and services to people, it's a way of loving them. And so if you love them, why wouldn't you have them love you back by giving you their money? You know, if you come out of energy and you come out of dedication and you come out of service, there isn't any limit to how much you can charge, within reason. And I don't believe in rip-off, or I don't believe in overcharging, but I certainly don't believe in undercharging. You know, and so many of you don't charge enough. You don't charge enough for your labor. You don't charge enough for your products, because it comes out of like that self-image that says, oh gosh, I'm not really worthy for all of this, so I really shouldn't be charging that, or they're not going to love me if I don't charge, you know, if I charge so much. But in fact, when you can see the transactions that you're involved in life as energy, then you're not involved in the emotions of how much things cost. It's a fact of the commercial world that the more quality you put into something, the more you can charge. And at the top end of the scale, you know, you can charge anything you want. And so you're looking at trying to put energy, trying to put yourself into your commercial endeavors, whatever they might be. I mean, so often you'll go into a business, you'll go into a hotel, you'll go someplace, and the whole energy of the place is bland. You know, nobody's in it. Nobody cares. It's institutionalized. It's like press a button and this thing comes out, and you don't feel good about parting with your money. But when you're with a person that's enthusiastic, they're happy, they put their heart and soul into the product, you don't mind. You feel the life force, you feel the God force, and that inspires you. And so it almost feels like you're transferring money to another part of yourself. You know, if the other person is sort of demanding, or they don't have any energy in it, or they're institutional, there's a sense of loss. You think, oh gosh, I've paid for this room, but I don't know if I really liked it, you know. It's very much a matter of putting yourself into your life, into your commercial life. And that's important. When you can subjugate your ego and put that underneath the ego of your customers or the people that are pulled to your life, then you have the ability to serve them. And that doesn't mean that you're going to lose any sense of identity inside yourself, because you're not. But you're going to come out of loving people by serving them. And serving them is like looking them in the eye and finding out what they want. You've got to remember that you're dealing with a person who's maybe scared or lonely, or their body aches, or they have a need, or they need friendship or company, or whatever they've come up for. Because what they've showed up for in your life may not necessarily be the product. You know, it may be some totally different reason. They've come around for healing of one kind or another. And if you can put yourself underneath them, then what happens is they feel your support. And there isn't a person out there that doesn't want to be supported, that doesn't want to feel more secure, because the name of the game out there is basically feeling insecure, feeling scared, feeling fearful about the fact that you don't necessarily control life. And so there you are. You're this confident, smiling, heroic being, and you get up underneath the person and you come out of service. I'll never forget